At 12:01 a.m. on October 1st, 2025, as Americans slept, the lights didn't go out across federal buildings, but the paychecks stopped. For the first time in 6 years, the United States government shut down, leaving nearly 2 million workers without pay and triggering a cascade of consequences that would ripple through the nation's economy, security, and daily life. The shutdown wasn't a surprise. It was the culmination of a familiar pattern that has plagued American governance for decades. When Congress failed to pass the necessary funding legislation for fiscal year 2026 by the September 30th deadline, the federal government was legally required to curtail operations, furlough non-essential workers, and halt services that millions of Americans depend on. A government shutdown occurs when Congress fails to pass the 12 appropriations bills needed to fund federal operations. Under the Anti-Deficiency Act of 1870, it's illegal for government officials to spend money that hasn't been appropriated by Congress. When funding expires, agencies must discontinue all non-essential functions until new legislation is passed and signed into law. This wasn't always the reality. Before 1980, funding gaps rarely resulted in shutdowns. That changed when Attorney General Benjamin Civiletti issued a legal opinion requiring agencies to cease operations during funding lapses. Since 1990, every funding gap lasting more than a few hours has triggered a shutdown. The 2025 shutdown, now extending beyond 3 weeks, has become a political standoff with real-world consequences. The House of Representatives passed a continuing resolution, a temporary funding measure, on September 19th by a vote of 217 to 212, which would extend funding through November 21st. But in the Senate, where 60 votes are required to advance spending bills, the measure has failed 11 consecutive times. Senate Republicans hold 53 seats, meaning they need Democratic support to pass any funding legislation. Democrats have refused to back the bill without provisions addressing Affordable Care Act premium subsidies that are set to expire. These subsidies, expanded during the COVID-19 pandemic in March 2021, were supposed to be temporary, but were extended through 2025. Making them permanent would cost approximately $400 billion over the next decade. Republicans argue that these demands are unrelated to keeping the government open and represent an attempt to reverse policies voters endorsed in the 2024 elections. Democrats counter that 20 million Americans face a healthcare crisis during open enrollment season, making this a fix-it-now issue, not a fix-it-later issue. The statistics tell part of the story. Approximately 900,000 federal workers have been furloughed, while 2 million others continue working without pay. But numbers alone don't capture the strain on families living paycheck to paycheck, wondering how they'll pay mortgages and buy groceries. At the Labor Department, only 3,100 of roughly 12,900 employees remain on the job. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has been reduced to a single person, the acting commissioner, meaning critical economic data releases have been delayed. The Consumer Price Index report, which affects Social Security cost of living adjustments, faces postponement. The Defense Department has kept 406,000 of its 741,500 civilian employees working, though uniformed military personnel may not receive their October 15 paychecks if the impasse continues. They'll receive back pay eventually, but that offers little comfort to service members struggling to cover immediate expenses. Essential services continue with skeleton crews. The Justice Department has exempted 90% of its employees from furloughs, including all FBI agents. The Department of Homeland Security keeps 95% of its workforce, roughly 258,000 employees, on the job, as their work is deemed necessary to protect life and property. Yet even essential workers face uncertainty. Air traffic controllers are required to work but aren't being paid, and some have chosen not to report for duty, causing flight delays at airports nationwide. The message is clear. You can require people to work, but you can't force them to do so indefinitely without compensation. Perhaps most alarming are the national security implications. House Speaker Mike Johnson called the situation very serious, particularly regarding the National Nuclear Security Administration, which oversees America's nuclear weapons stockpile and is planning widespread furloughs to address funding shortfalls. Every day that the government is shut down, it is a danger to the American people, Johnson warned. We are in a nuclear arms race with adversaries right now. It can't be any more serious than this. The Aerospace Industries Association echoed these concerns, urging Congress to pass a clean, continuing resolution to ensure the continuity of critical functions that protect national security, prevent air travel delays, and sustain innovation. As the shutdown drags into its fourth week, both parties remain entrenched. Senate Majority Leader John Thune has stated Republicans are willing to have a discussion about Democratic concerns, but insists on reopening the government first. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer maintains that Democrats want to end the shutdown as soon as we can, but won't compromise on healthcare subsidies. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has leveraged the crisis to pursue other policy goals, pausing or canceling billions in infrastructure and climate projects in states that voted Democratic in 2024, a move widely seen as pressure tactics to force Democratic cooperation. This isn't America's first government shutdown rodeo. Since 1980, 11 funding gaps have led to federal employee furloughs. The most significant was the 35-day shutdown from December 2018 to January 2019. But the frequency of these crises reveals a deeper dysfunction. Congress last passed all appropriations bills before the fiscal year began in 1997, 28 years ago. The reliance on continuing resolutions has become standard procedure. Fiscal year 2025 was funded through 3 separate temporary measures before Congress finally passed a full-year resolution. This constant brinkmanship creates uncertainty that hampers long-term planning for agencies, contractors, and state governments that depend on federal funding. As Americans navigate the shutdown's consequences, delayed economic data, reduced national park services, threatened food assistance programs, one truth becomes undeniable. Government shutdowns are a policy failure with real human costs. They don't save money. Furloughed workers receive back pay when shutdowns end. They don't improve governance. They disrupt essential services and erode public trust. Bipartisan support exists for automatic continuing appropriations that would prevent shutdowns by maintaining prior funding levels when Congress misses deadlines. Wisconsin and Rhode Island have used such provisions for years. September 2025 polling found 76% support for this approach. Yet as October 2025 draws to a close, Congress remains deadlocked. Essential workers labor without paychecks, and Americans continue living with the consequences of political dysfunction. The shutdown will eventually end. They always do. But the question remains, how many more times will the nation's business grind to a halt before lawmakers find a lasting solution? The lights may still be on in federal buildings, but the system itself seems increasingly dim.